Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMSI.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Humanity First. We have a packed episode today. Later on, we're going to have a couple of folks who actually are board members at BAMSI, where I work, who are going to come and talk about the real estate market, both in relation to commercial and residential. If you don't know that the price of housing is going through the roof, as it were, at the moment, then you're really not paying attention. So we're gonna talk about how that affects communities, how that affects folks who are new Americans coming into this country and trying to get a foot on the ladder. But before, I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that are on everybody's mind at the moment. This month, of course, is Pride Month, and you don't have to go very far to see a celebration of that, both in the media and on people's high streets. In Massachusetts, I think I consider us very fortunate to have a community that is welcoming and if you think about gay marriage, Massachusetts was one of the first states to legalize that. And if you have a conversation with young people nowadays, there's a bit of a tilt of their head when they hear that was something that was illegal a while ago. We have come a long way, but we don't need to rest on our laurels about issues of equality when it comes to Pride Month, when it comes to LGBTQ issues. I was doing a little bit of research this morning, and I found that across the country, there are many anti-gay LGBT acts, bills in the Senate of many states. In fact, I discovered that there were 18 bills that are restricting rights, LGBT rights and trans rights. And in Missouri, there are 17. If you go around the country, you're going to get people who are trying to restrict people's identity relative to name changes. You're getting efforts to restrict public behaviors, and you're getting changes in the law which really restrict trans people's rights and medical rights. I spoke to somebody the other day, and a trans person, they said it's very uncomfortable when you know that states are trying to legislate you out of existence. If you think about that for a minute, that really does go against all human rights, and we really need to be aware of that and fight for those rights for everybody. And I believe that equality is more than passing a law, or in this case, more than fighting a law. It really is the struggle for the hearts and minds of communities and the communities where people live. And so as long as we're talking about that, as long as we're giving people the right to live an authentic life, then I think we're moving in the right direction. But those things are under fire in this country at the moment. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was what's been going on up in Canada with the wildfires. We really have been struggling. And at the moment, the northeastern seaboard is covered in a pall of smoke coming down from Canada. This is record-breaking numbers in terms of what we're looking at here. The Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring Service, and yes, there is one, and it's called the Copernicus, which I think is wonderful, figured in May of this year, 54.8 million tons of particles came down from Canada and settled in our communities on the northeastern seaboard. That's twice as much as any other wildfire that's happened in the history of this country. This is directly related to climate change. This is directly related to the way that we use land in this country. And there is a warning out at the moment that people may have seen that with El Nino happening, and you may have read about this, it started in May of this year in the Pacific Ocean. It's going to push our temperatures up nearer to that 1.5 degrees that we're all worried about. This is something we need to pay attention to in our communities. And seeing these particles and these orange hues around us every day is a reminder that we have to keep our eyes and ears open, and we have to keep talking about how we combat climate change. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk about real estate.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm an essential worker here at BAMSI, and I'm a nurse. Nurses are essential here at BAMSI because as nurses, we really have the opportunity to make an impact. We have very small ratios, so we have the opportunity to really learn everything about the person served and be able to give the best care. It really serves such a great purpose for me as being a nurse and really why I came into nursing. Learn more about nursing opportunities at bamsijobs.org.
Giving a voice to the voiceless, pulling stories out of the shadows and putting them under the spotlight, making sure that each person is valued and cared for. This is Humanity First with Peter Evers, presented by BAMSI.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back to Humanity First. For the second section of the program, we're going to talk about something that's on a lot of people's minds at the moment. And we have two guests who are experts. They're also friends of the organization I work for, BAMSI, both being board members. I'm going to welcome Jeanne Fuller-Jones, who works for Keller Williams, and Keller Williams is going to get a couple of shouts here. Welcome, Jeanne. Lovely to have you with us. And
Thank
thanks.
you. Good to be here.
And also Cesar Miranda, who is a partner at Keller Williams, and you work in the commercial space in real estate.
Correct. In the commercial division of Keller Williams. Correct. Thank you.
Well, welcome, and Jeanne, you have an expertise in the residential side. I don't think it's escaped anybody's notice over the past few years that housing prices have been rising astronomically, and office space is another kettle of fish, if you will, in terms of availability of office space post-COVID. By the way, I'm really happy that we're having lots of post-COVID discussions now, given what everybody's been through. But there's no doubt when we have a pandemic like this, when something affects the entire world, there's going to be shakeout in terms of people's mental health, people's jobs, and real estate doesn't escape that, I suppose. I would say that real estate is the heart of any community. When you look at what's happened in certain places, I always think about Detroit, because Detroit is a great example of a city that sort of died, and many of those residential areas became uninhabitable through neglect in a way, and lack of urban planning and lack of a public health policy and all of those things. We are nowhere near that, of course. But what I'm worried about anyway, and Jeanne, you and I have had this conversation. I have a child who is now an adult who has been looking to get on the ladder for probably 2 years now and has not succeeded, and is getting a little desperate and wondering how that's going to happen. I read recently that in February of 2020, the average house price in Brockton was about 320 something thousand, and now, at least it was actually last November when I looked, it was about 425. That's a massive leap. Brockton is a gateway city. Brockton is a city very close to my heart and yours, I know, because we spent so many years there. It's a gateway city that is affordable, that is multicultural, that new Americans can come to and feel that they have a chance of getting on that ladder. Mm-hmm. And many of those new Americans, of course, look to property in terms of generating generational wealth. Is that still the case, Jeanne? Because it looks pretty dire in terms of the opportunities for folks right now.
The interesting piece is, yes, Brockton is more affordable than a lot of other areas. But what you see is a lot of the buyers coming into Brockton are coming out of Boston, and the Brockton people are looking south. We're looking my Brockton buyers were looking at Taunton, New Bedford, Fall River. Everything has to push down a little bit more. The window in which someone can get into a new home or a home in Brockton, as anywhere else, just the window gets shorter all the time with the rising prices and the affordability changing. A 6% mortgage is not outrageous. Right. 20 years ago, when I brought our home, we thought that was great. When we could refi down to 5.5, that was a big plus. But people have been so used to money being almost free for several years, it has really impacted people's purchasing powers. So someone who could buy a $400,000 home a couple of years ago can now get a $350,000 home. And there aren't that many of them out there. I just did the numbers before I came over. In the immediate Brockton area, Brockton, Taunton, Rainham, Easton, the Bridgewaters, there's under 70 homes under $600,000.
Wow.
I put it at 600,000 because that's,
That's a
that's
jumbo
what you have to
mortgage,
get.
yeah.
But not anymore with some of them. And rentals are just as bad. The cheapest rental was $1,200, and that's for a single room
Wow.
in a single family home around the corner from us. And they go up to $3,500 to rent a 3-bedroom townhouse. So people are paying the traditional trajectory of rent, save your money, buy a house, when all your money is going to rent. If you're renting an apartment that's going to be $1,800 a month, and you've got to come up with first, last, and security.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. You might as well keep going and have, maybe put aside $10,000 as a down payment on a house. But in the meantime, you got to live somewhere. So that's the challenge, is people are really, really being squeezed at that entry level. Can they do it? Absolutely. I just sold a 3-family around the corner from me, right around the corner.
Yeah.
The guy that bought it is the construction worker. He's been working hard for years, saved up his money, and he's living on the 3rd floor in the small apartment. He's got the other 2 floors rented to people that work with him. They're hardworking people. Those trucks are out there going out at 5 o'clock every morning, and he's trying to keep the rents affordable. But it's really, really a struggle for everyone.
Yeah, and it's getting more and more difficult for those folks. And, somebody once said to me that you should really be paying about 1/3 of your income for your housing. Not the case anymore, right?
No, they can't. You can't. Even if you're on a Section 8 voucher or something like that, that's gone up to 35 and 40%. Mm-hmm. And in some instances, those programs will allow the resident to pay up to 50% of their gross income for rent and utilities. Yeah. That means they're paying 60 to 70% of their net just for the roof over their head, much less put food on that table.
And pay the electric bill.
So it's really, really challenging. Yeah, the 30% days are long gone.
Just a question about those people who are coming in from Boston. Who are those people? Are they families as well?
They are families. They are hardworking families who are being priced out of Dorchester and Roxbury. Or, Mattapan, Milton, they're coming down. Brockton's still more affordable than Dorchester.
Right. Is the same thing happening with Providence? Like, are people pushing up from there as well because we're seeing high prices?
South.
It's all going south. It's all
New Bedford, Fall River has benefited from a lot of that movement from Boston to Brockton, as Jeanne indicated, and they're moving down to. Matter of fact, the Brockton School Department just recently had announced in the papers and different publications that a lot of the families are being priced out. And so some of those families, obviously they take the students with them, the children, they're moving to New Bedford and Fall River. So that creates other challenges in itself, and it impacts their budgets.
Right. And as we look at urban planning, and I probably shouldn't have mentioned Detroit because Detroit is an extreme example of that. But what you begin to see then is the shrinking of the schools, the shrinking of community. I think about when a family moves into a community, they look at a lot of things, don't they? They look at the school. And I will say Brockton High is a wonderful school. I'm so impressed with the work that they've done for such a huge school over the years. And to think of that, and I think it was 130 people that were recently laid off.
Correct.
And that is a direct consequence of housing costs, right?
Right.
And there's other things that are going to happen with that. What are the kids going to be doing? Certainly when my kid, I raised my kids in Somerville, and they played baseball, they played soccer, and you could see in that city that there were less baseball teams on a yearly basis. That intra-league had 28 teams when I first got there. By the time I finished, there were 15. There is this sort of depopulation in a way. And what are all the service industries going to do as well? There's sort of knock-on effect to that.
Well, and the population that can stay, one of the downsides of money being so cheap for the last several years was folks like Cesar, maybe instead of saying, hey, it's time to go up, and we're going to buy that nice new house at $700,000. For the money, we're just going to take a HELOC and get some money and spend $30,000 on the kitchen and the bathroom and the deck, and we're staying right here for another 20 years.
Correct.
So my first-time buyer, that house isn't there.
Isn't available.
So more people are staying where they are. I do a lot of work with seniors and folks that are maybe thinking about downsizing, right-sizing, and probably 70% of the time after I go to see them, and we do some numbers and look at things, the answer is, you know what, this house works for you just fine.
Right.
Let's renovate that downstairs bathroom, make it more accessible, and you stay right here.
Right. And then you mentioned the interest rate hikes.
Yeah, because they can't, they're not going to spend all that much more. They don't want to take a mortgage and buy more.
That's right.
So they're going to stay right where they are. So again, that's the lack of supply.
Yeah, and I think this does come down to to social policy in the end. What are we going to do as a country? As somebody said to me the other day, and in Boston, Boston has become not affordable. You 1.2 million for a house in Hyde Park, which is a typical blue collar neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Somebody said to me, if all the rich move into these places and Four Point Channel and places like that, who is going to provide those services for those people? And there's going to be some sort of a strange change to Boston. Correct. So we're looking at more, I know I've talked to the mayor of Brockton about this, but more affordable housing, creating laws that sort of push developers into providing more affordable housing to get people on the bottom run. That has to be good for a community, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It provides more places, more people to live. And those seniors that are staying in their homes longer are starting to need more services, and there's got to be a place for those people to live.
Correct.
So you need all the levels to maintain it.
And business as well. It's all interconnected.
Absolutely.
I mean, as we say, the old adage in commercial real estate, trails rooftops. So where you have rooftops, you have consumers, you have different services you could provide. And so just to speak to commercial real estate, and what I handle primarily, I've handled different product types at 20 years in the business, but we have major product types from office, as you mentioned earlier, Peter, in our conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of challenges, especially with COVID and the displacement of workers, dialogue back to work, and some employees are not ready to do that. And maybe we may end up at a hybrid system, but there's a lot of challenges there as a result. Then you have retail, which most of my focus is in. You have multifamily, that Jeanne alluded to. There's a lot of demand for multifamily housing, and cost of construction is impacting all product types. I mean, like I said, office is because what we have, typically when people speak to commercial real estate or real estate in general, they paint it with a broad brush. Mm-hmm. But so if you look at the hospitality, for example, is another sector. They've bounced back from COVID. From all indication from speaking to colleagues, they're in that space, and these hotels are back to capacity. I mean, if you think about it during COVID, imagine what those hospitality groups and some of these hotels, some of these individuals, owners, and practically some of them filed bankruptcy or were in a dire situation. So they bounced back. So retail it's interesting. When people say to me about retail is dying, because when you look at all the store closures, Bed Bath & Beyond and others, I say retail is changing. Yeah. And retail is responding to the community. So for example, under the retail umbrella, we have not just your traditional retailers, but you also have the Amazons of the world, because they want to be closer to the consumer. What we call from bricks to clicks, or clicks to bricks. So people want to be able to shop online. They want to be able to get their product in a timely fashion. So retail provides an opportunity because they're in the community. So you have this omni-channel effect. So like, for example, just in Brockton, just speaking of local community, we have O'Reilly's Auto Part that's opening on Belmont Street where Stop and Shop used to be. So it's about 35,000 square feet store. It's not just a retail, but it also has a delivery component to provide products into the neighboring community and on certain miles out. So there's a lot of changes. It's dynamic. I mean, some of the things that we saw even pre-COVID, you go into certain restaurants today, or we call fast casual, quick serve. It's all drive-through. Yeah. Majority of their business is through drive-through. Yeah. So there's not as much sit down. But also, I think pre-COVID, it was a response to also the dynamics of families, right, with playing sports and what have you. I know my family, we're constantly on the go. A lot of families are constantly on the go. So it provides an option for them, right, in terms of a lot of families. And also to that additional in certain restaurants, especially when families are watching their budget and the way we live today, and they want to minimize certain costs. So, some of these restaurants are seeing that and they're responding to that. So, but when you look at commercial real estate as a whole, we're dealing with similar challenges, and industrial is responding very well. So when we look at, some of the challenges in terms of product type, it would say more sort of office. But even when I speak to some of my colleagues in that sector, they say, depending on what it is, if it's office medical and you're talking about needs for biochemical pharmaceuticals or research, particularly in Boston, some of those areas, they're doing well. So they're not all the same. You have suburban offices, you have, off downtown. So there's all these different nuances to commercial real estate. And so once again, office has its challenges, but what we see across the board where I guess the headlines that we're all concerned about is this R word, recession, inflation, all these headlines. They put a lot of stress into the system in terms of banking systems. The same concerns that on the residential side you see also on the commercial side, because investors and owners, and sometimes when we're doing deals, you look at, so that same deal, interest rates have gone from 3% to 6%, so that impacts the valuation of the properties. So, but there's still a lot of bright spots in the market. Like for me, so when Jeanne speaks to individuals moving into the city of Brockton, what have you, so that means there's more demand for commercial real estate space. You have groups looking for restaurant space and all these different businesses. So, but the cost of that real estate has gone up because we're not building because cost of construction has gone up. Right. So there's a lot of demand out there for same groups going after the same product types.
Yeah, and that's the same on the residential side as well. There's just not enough stock that's available. But I like what you say. I always think about that sort of, are you Blockbuster or are you Netflix, which is that sort of question. And I do think that there is an American ingenuity, this ability to adapt to the situation that you're in is something that's happening right in front of our eyes, right? And a friend of mine owns a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, and he put a drive-in and his business went up eight times. I mean, getting people through and fitting with people's lifestyles. I think those are really optimistic sort of ideas about where we're going. And at the end of the day, people have to live somewhere. At the end of the day, people have to work in communities, and communities are strong, and communities will come through this. That's really the impression that I get. But it's really difficult for people right now. Just to finish, are there any words of encouragement that you can give, Jeannie, to a young couple or a young person who's starting out?
Save your money, go to work, pay your bills, do it again, save your money, because your home is out there, but you can't be spending your money on everything else. You just got to put some money away. Your buy-in is going to be a little bit more, but in the long run, it's still the best investment in the world.
Yeah, pay your housing future first.
Pay yourself and build some generational wealth for your family. Maybe no one in your family's ever owned, but you know what? Doesn't mean that you're not going to be the one to do it.
That's right. It has been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much. And as usual, when people are amazing on the show, they get asked back. So hopefully we can come back in a few months and check in on the state of the housing market.
Absolutely.
And the commercial market.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.